here are our plants that we're going to be painting today. So we were pretty much going to be doing, these were the ones that were on the flyer, and then I popped in a couple extra. If we have time, we'll get to them. This is sort of like a mixed planter, and a bunch of different pots on these plants. And so you can mix and match if you like this plant, because this one and this one are pretty much the same, except I made the formation a little bit different. So if you wanted to switch the pot or even invent your own pot. And I also picked up from another class that I taught. Ooh, that light's really bright. There we go, it's a little better. Some more pot examples, and feel free to make up your own pots. Those are just so much fun to do. And then also that from our cacti class, if you guys remember. So you can invent all these fun pots and invent plants too, and paint your own plants that you have at home too. So these techniques will give you the basics, and you'll be able to paint any plant from there. So I'm going to go over our supplies super quickly. I have 140-pound paper. I cut it down to about 5 by 7 just so I have a lot of demo paper for you guys, but you can paint whatever size you want. We got some watercolor paint. These are all pretty much Winsor & Newton paints. And I just put in all the colors that I liked. This isn't a ready-made palette. This is a custom palette that I made. And you can find all of this stuff at Jerry's Artorama, Blick, any one of those art stores will carry these. I always recommend getting your basic paints, your red, your yellow, your blue, maybe a black, and then as you go along, every time you go to Michael's, you could pick up a tube of a color that you like, and pretty soon you'll have a whole collection together. So you don't have to start with a whole lot of paint. I am using these brushes today. They're both size 6, both 2 different brands. One's a Silver Black Velvet, and one is Mimic Kolinsky. My very favorite brushes, which are, I actually just cleaned them, so they're drying. They are the Simply Simmons brushes, and you can grab those at Michael's. And they're super inexpensive, but so are these Mimic Kolinskys from Jerry's Artorama. I just started using those a couple weeks ago, and I really like them. Just make sure whatever brush you use is soft and it comes to a point. I have a paper towel and some clean water. Now, some people like to have 2 clean water things, one to rinse their brush out in and one just to mix with their watercolors. I just use one and I change it fairly frequently. I like my setup to be as minimal as possible. All right, so we're gonna start with this guy over here. And so if you look at it, got very thin stems and really big leaves. And these leaves are drawn in with my brush and then filled in. They're not like these leaves, which I do the leaf technique that I've taught you guys a bunch before. And don't worry, if you've not taken a class with me before, I'll go over this technique. But this one is fully drawn in. So we'll start with super easy. So get your brush wet. Don't be afraid to smush your brush in the water, especially if you have a new brush. It tends to be, do you see how that's hard to bend? It tends to be covered in sizing so that it doesn't get damaged during transit. So when you get it home, you really got to dab it in there. I'm just going to mix up a color by tapping into my paint. Mix up a color that'll work for my pot, and you can feel free to make your pot any color that you want. Now, if you have a pencil on you and you prefer to draw in the shape and then fill it in with paint, you can absolutely do that. I'm just going to go for it with my brush. But if you feel more comfortable drawing, please feel free doing that. Okay, so this pot's pretty simple. There's just a lip on the pot and then a bottom part. And if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat and Lorraine will periodically ask them to me. All right. So the top of your pot is not going to be a straight line. Your pot is round. So when you look at it, you'll see that bottom curve. And these are illustrations. They're not fine art pieces, so I don't want it to be too realistic. I just like them to look fun, and it'll be your own interpretation of your plant. Okay, so to start, we're just going to use the side of our brush, not the tip of our brush, but the side of our brush. And I'm just going to paint in a curved line, like so. It doesn't have to be perfect, just like that. I'm going to fill in the bottom. I'm going to try to mimic that curve. If it's easier for you, like it is for me, you can flip it over and try to mimic that curve that you made up top. And then you want to square off the lines. Like so. And that's how you have the top part of your pot. This part here. Now the part underneath is a little bit smaller. So what you're going to do is don't start at the edge, start in about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just angling mine a little bit. If you want yours to be straight down, you absolutely could do that. On one side, grab a little more paint. And then the other side. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then you want to, again, mimic that curve from the top. So I'm going to flip it over. And close enough. And then you want to fill it in, grab a little bit of water, and use that to fill in your pot. And yes, some of it will blend with the top, but that's totally fine. If you don't want it to blend with the top, you just wait until the top is perfectly dry and then you paint in the bottom. And I'm just pushing that paint around with my brush to get it as even as possible. And ta-da! I have my pot. Now the fun thing about plants is that they're so random. You don't have to draw the exact same amount of leaves that I did. You don't have to draw them in the same exact place like I did. As long as the leaf shape is the same, you're good to go. You don't even have to make it the same color. I'm going to mix up some green here. And you'll get to know your paints. Some colors, you just have to tap your brush in lightly and pick up a little bit of paint. Some colors just require a little bit more work. Like this one, I need to really dab into it a little bit more. And then I just smoosh it around on my palette. Very technical term. Until it's distributed in my brush. So for now, we're going to let the pot dry. But when it's dry, we're going to come back in and you'll see on here, and you don't have to do this again, I put a little bit of shadowing on here just to make it look 3D. You don't have to do that at all. Like this one doesn't really have a whole lot of shadowing on it, neither does this one. But I'm going to do it for this one. So I'm going to show you what the leaf will look like, and then I'll paint them on here. And so this leaf has a very thin stem, so I'm going to press really lightly with my brush. And I'm going to curve it like that. If I pressed hard with my brush, I get a really big line. I don't want a really big line. I want a thin line. Okay. So I have my thin line. Hold it up closer so you can see a thin line down here. And then I'm just going to draw an eye shape, like an eyeball. So I'm going to curve one side and curve the other side so that it's very pointy on both ends, like that. And then I'm just going to use my brush to fill it in. Like that. I'll do another one and I'll show you. Maybe I'll use a little bit darker paint so you can see it well. This one's another color that you really have to kind of scrub at to pick it up. All right. So you got your thin line. And some plants are going to have thicker stems, like that guy over there. But this one has a thinner stem. And then you want to curve the line, bring it to a tip, curve it on the other side, bring it to a tip, and then you want to fill it in. If you're filling it in and you still see the line on either side, that means you didn't have enough water on your brush. That might be a fun look, or if you want it to be as fluid as mine, add more water. And the library has all their classes nicely recorded on their YouTube channel, and I have a Watercolor 101 class that I did recently, and it's on there, and you can learn all of those techniques and practice at any time. Okay, so this is how we do the leaves. We're going to actually put it on our plant now. I'll rinse my brush because I want a different shade of green. And so I'm going to start the first leaf like if it's leaning this way. So I'm just going to start at the pot and draw my thin line this way. Now, if you're having trouble with your thin line, you can always use a really thin, tiny brush instead of using light pressure with this brush. But that's what I love about watercolor brushes. You get a lot of different looks out of one brush. Okay, so we made our stem. Made mine a little too long, so I'm going to start my oval a little way down. And then you fill it in. And that's the beginning of our plant right there. And then you can decide whether you want your next one to be taller, whether you want it to flop over this way, whether you want it to go this way. It's up to you. This is your little imaginary plant that will stay alive forever. I don't know, are you guys good with plants? I'm trying to be good with plants, but I did not inherit my mom's green thumb, put it that way. Okay, I think this one, I'm going to show you how to do a half leaf. So this leaf here looks like it's facing us, right? It's a little bit flipped over. So it's not this view. It's sort of just looking at us. And I'll show you how to do that. So you can do your stem. And then you want to just draw half of a leaf. And I will show you with that darker paint so you can see what I'm doing. So you draw your stem like so. And then you want to go halfway with that curve. Just halfway like that. And then you just want to attach those lines by drawing a curve towards you, like so. And then you fill it in. And that's how you get that leaf that looks like it's flipped over facing you, or maybe it's flipped over the other way facing the back of the plant. Let's do that again one more time. We'll curve it this way this time. And we're gonna half curve, and then you want like a little U shape dip in the middle. And then you fill it in. And that's how you get your little half leaf. I just know I'm going to end up painting that dark color on here because I keep almost forgetting to wash my brush off. Okay, so we're going to have a half leaf here. I think it's really bright, so you know what? I am going to change that green. You can continue with that leaf, that shade of green. I'm just going to go with a darker green. So I'm just going to, just so you can see it better, I'm going to trace over that line I made with the other one and fill it in. Because my lights are blowing out that light color and you can't see it. All right, hopefully that's better for you. All right, so we're gonna do that half leaf. Like so. And you fill it in. Like so. And then I'm gonna do, maybe I'll do one over here, kind of in the opposite direction. Don't worry if you think you make a mistake or your paint blobs, like mine did at the bottom there a little bit, is your imaginary plant. And also feel free to move your paper around to make it more comfortable for your hand. It's easier to move your paper than move your hand and twist it around. You don't want to hurt yourself. And you just keep filling these in a shape that's pleasing to you. I mean, even if you wanted all of them to line up straight across, you could do that. I kind of like my plants to be swoopy and crazy, kind of organic shaped. And again, you can look at an actual plant reference from a photograph or in real life to get ideas on how to paint your plants. Like this guy was a plant that I used to have. This was a container that I planted last year. That guy knocked over that pot, so it doesn't exist anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter.
Kris, someone is asking if you can move down your sample painting.
Yes, I just moved it because I realized I kicked it out.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, great.
Yeah. All right. And then just keep filling it in how many ever leaves you want. I'm going to put maybe 3 more. And you can overlap your leaves if you want to. I just like to keep them separate. I'm going to paint a few more leaves and then I'm going to go back to the pot. Show you how to put in those shadows on there. And I just put my finger in this leaf here, so it's going to have to be a bigger leaf now to cover up. So you see, you can come back from any mistake that you make, right? I'm always putting my hand down on my wet paintings, always. I'm just going to make that curve a little bit bigger, both sides, just to accommodate my oops. And you can't ever tell that that happened. Oh, that's adorable. I like that already. Maybe I need one here. And you can step back and look and see where you want to add a new leaf. This one, I'm actually drawing the leaf before I draw the stem. Go down like that. And I think I'm going to leave it that way. So this one turned out to be a different color because I started with the other color. So you can mix that up too, because sometimes if you observe some of your plants, like they change color, like the younger, newer leaves are a different shade from the older leaves. You can even maybe add a little brown to the tip. to make it look like an older leaf, or maybe you can use autumn colors. Maybe your plant's changing color. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of dark blue to put the shadowing in on my pot. But you can use a darker shade of that green if you want to. Okay, I'm going to show you in my example. I have a little bit of darkness on this side, and I have a little bit under here and along the side. So I'm going to do that bit first. So I'm just going to take my brush and run the tip of the brush right under where the lip of that pot is. Just carefully follow that line almost all the way. Do you see how that already started giving it some definition? Oops, put my brush in the wrong spot. All good. Then I'm gonna paint a little bit down the side, a little bit of a thicker line. All the way down the side like that. And then I'm gonna rinse my brush, and I'm just gonna soften off that line by running my brush back and forth just to soften it off a little bit. Maybe I'll add a little more here. And then I'm going to add a little bit up top. Just on the edge. Like so. And if you don't like the look of it blended, you can leave it as is. But I like it blended. That's how you get a little bit of dimension on your pot. You can also put a tiny little bit on this end. I'm not going to blend this so much. Just going to draw a bit like so. But I'm not going to blend that. I'm going to leave a little bit of a harsher line there. And you can, if you want to, put in the rest of the pot up here, but I like just doing the front of the pot. I think it's more fun. Plus, it's a little easier. Anybody have any questions about this first plant? I'm going to give you guys about a minute or two to finish yours. But if you have any questions, pop it in the chat, and Lorraine.
So far, no questions on that painting. We'll give that a second, but somebody is asking about your choice of paints and brushes. I did give them your website.
Yeah.
I know you have it all there, but if you want to talk about that for a second while people are catching up.
Sure. Was there a specific question about it, or just sort of my preferences?
What brand of brushes and paints do you
Right.
use?
So this one is called Mimic Kolinsky, and I've only been using this one for 2-ish weeks. And I have to say, I really like it. It's a synthetic sable, so it's not animal hair. And I just tend to like those brushes better than real animal hair brushes. I don't know why. That's just my preference. And then I will grab one of the ones that's drying over here because I really want you guys to see the Simply Simmons ones that I love. Grab a large one that's hopefully nothing on there moved too much. I tripped. Okay. It's upside down. This is Simply Simmons from Michaels. Come on, focus. I know you can do it. I think the light's making it struggle. Simply Simmons. This is a 12, but I get it in different sizes. They're acrylic brushes, but I like them for watercolor. They're great. These are mostly Winsor & Newton paints. Now these are tube paints. So they come in a tube, and I like so. And I squeeze the tubes into these pans, and I let these pans dry overnight. And then I use them that way because you use a little bit less paint and it's easy for me to just sort of flip this over and take it with me. I recently started playing with the Lucas paints. I really like them. I want more colors. They come already in the can. I don't know if they sell tubes of them, but I really like them so far. Lukas. Let's see. So yeah, my preference in brushes and paints are pretty much those. I try a lot of different brushes all the time. But I have to say the Simply Simmons are the ones that I've grabbed the most in the past 5 years or so. But I really like this Mimic, M-I-M-I-K, Kolinsky. I guess it means mimic because it's sort of is a fake version of a sable, which I really like. So I've been grabbing this more than anything else. As for paper, any 140-pound cold press paper is typically my favorite. Cold press is a little bit rough. I don't know if you can see a little bit of texture on there. And I just like that a little bit better. It has a little more tooth that grabs the paint better. And if you have any more specific questions, I love to talk supplies. So send me an email. My email is krisloyaart, KrisLoyaart @gmail.com. And I love to talk supplies. So I can give you a supply list. We can talk about it. And if you're shopping online, I can help you. I just realized what I crashed into and it was my plug. So I'm going to replug before we move on to our next plant. So if anybody has any questions about that first plant, now would be your time to ask. All right, so we are moving on to our next plant. If you think of a question, go ahead and ask it. I'm going to put that guy over there. We're going to run out of space for, here, I'll move the other sample pots and I'll bring them back if you guys want to take a screenshot of it later. Okay. All right, so we're moving on to plant number 2, which is this fun guy right here. It is a Z plant, or my interpretation of a Z plant, which I just found out is really poisonous to animals, so not a good idea to have. So just paint them. Those are fine for your pets. So I'm going to use blue from a pot. And all this pot is a series of blue lines, and they're curved just like this one, and they gradate down so that this is a much larger line and it comes down to a much shorter line. So you get that pot look. So it's really easy. All you're going to do is draw little curved lines. And you don't want thick lines. Oops. So I'm going to use my brush kind of like a pen, hold it like a pen. That gives me the control. And I'm going to try to make it a little larger so you guys can see. So I'm going to make one curved line. I'm going to make mine a little bit thicker so that you can see what I'm doing. And to make your line thicker, all you have to do is press harder on your brush. Okay, we got one line. And I'm not going to start at the beginning of this line. I'm going to kind of inch in about, not quite of a fourth of an inch, maybe an eighth of an inch. And watch my spacing between there. And I didn't put more paint on my brush yet, so this line is a little bit lighter. I love that variation. I think it's pretty. Then my next line, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to come in a little bit more. And I'm going to stop before I get to the other end of that line. Now I'll add a little more paint to my brush. And I think I'll do 2 more. I like odd numbers. It's more visually interesting. All right. There you go. And then again, I'm going to start a little bit inward from that where that first line started, last line started, and I'm going to stop. And I could flip it over and make that line a little bit straighter, but you know what? I kind of like how that looks a little wonky. I like my wonky pots. And that's it. And that's how you make your pot. Now for this one, you can also go in and darken up areas on the edge if you want. But that variation that naturally happened by me not putting more paint on my brush, I kind of like it, so I'm going to leave it as is. However, if I was going to darken it, I would just take a little bit more paint and tap it on the edges and blend it out, just like we did with this pot. Everybody following so far? I know I'm going a little fast. Okay, so we're going to do the plant.
It's like everyone's doing okay so far, Kris.
All right, everybody's busy painting. It's hard to paint and type at the same time. I'm going to mix up some green. All right. And I start with sap green. That's the green that I have on my palette that I like. I also have olive green. And then into it, I mix various blues and yellows, sometimes even red to get, or different shades of green to get all my different greens. But you can just use any green that you have on your palette, add some blue, add some red, add some yellow, and that'll give you a whole range of different shades of green. Okay, so I'm gonna move to this sample sheet here, and I'm gonna show you how I did this plant. Now for this one, you can do two things. You can do your stem and then your leaves, or you can do all of your stems and all of your leaves. So you wanna curve your line. Doesn't have to be as thin as the last plant, but not super thick. And then you're going to make sure that the tip of your brush is facing the stem, and you don't want to go straight out. You want to angle your brush a little bit like this. So you don't want to be straight out like that. You want to angle it because you want your leaves angled, right? And you're going to start at the bottom, and you're just going to stamp your brush. See how that just gave me a leaf? Stamp it. Move it and stamp it. So you're using your brush like a stamp. Give it one stamp at the top. And then you want to flip your paper over so that keep that angle going. And you just want to stamp your brush. And look at how cute that is. Just by stamping with your brush, you made an entire branch. Now, if you wanted a larger plant, if you're painting really large, you can use a larger brush. Or you can also practice to see, you know, slight stamp, slightly larger stamp, slightly larger stamp, push down all the way with your brush. Look at the 4 different sizes of leaves I get out of one brush. But for this plant, you just want teeny little leaves. So you want to crisscross your stems. Paint one that way, and it's okay that it's all wet. It's gonna kind of melt together a little bit. I have my brush at an angle, and I'm stamping. I'm moving the brush instead of my hand. I don't think we'll call it a lazy move. We'll call it an efficient move. I'm just gonna stamp. And you can see how that starts to build that plant. Now, you could just go ahead and paint a whole bunch of stems and then start stamping your leaves. Or you could do one at a time. It's up to you. And build your plant that way. Quick little tip or trick, if you did that the opposite way and then you painted a little bow on top, that would be, or put a couple little red dots for little berries, that would be a cute little design to put on a Christmas card, a holiday card, winter card. I'm gonna mix up some more paint because I'm running out. And I like this palette because I can mix everything on here and I don't have to get a separate palette. And I'm going to start to build my plant, my Z plant. So maybe I'll do 5 stems for this one. 1 going that way, 2, 3, 4. I'll make this one cross. Maybe I'll just do 5 for this one. So this one has a lot less, and you'll notice same technique, except I didn't really crisscross these stems. They all just kind of lean out from the middle, and you get a whole different look than this one that's chaotic and everything's all crisscross. So it's up to you how you want to paint that. And you can see, you can use the same techniques and get various plants. And you can even make up your own plants. I don't know that all of these are actual plants that exist. Maybe they are, but maybe not. Oh, and to add another thing to the person that asked the question about my supplies, my preference is always a round brush, but you can always grab different shapes to try. But I always just grab a round brush. That's probably because that's what I started using, and you can do so many different things with a round brush. But definitely feel free to experiment with different shaped brushes. Every time I go to the art store, I'll grab something new to test out. And you can also vary this, like if you want to change, grab a different green over here. You want to vary your greens to make it interesting. You can do a more yellow green. Although when my plants start to go a little bit yellow green, I get nervous. I'm like, I killed another one. My plants never like completely die. They just act up and act like they're gonna die and then they're fine. So I guess my plants have tantrums. I don't know. And I think it needs a little something in the middle. I don't think I'm gonna go taller. I don't know. No, I'll stay shorter. And some of the ones that are lower, there's so many leaves on all the others. I kind of don't need to start the leaves at the very bottom of the line. Yeah, I like how that looks. If you wanted to make it, you know, maybe make one come all the way down, make it look droopy, that will also give you a different look for your plant. I like how that turned out. That would be cute to put on the front cover of a little card to send to somebody. You can just say hello. some text below it if you want to. You can say plant person, you know, whatever. Or here's a plant that'll stay alive forever. But you don't want them thinking that you think that they're a bad plant person. All right, I'm going to give you a couple seconds to finish this one, and we're going to move on to this guy, which I think is the one a lot of people want to learn how to paint. It's not quite a monstera, but it has the bones of one. The bones, the shape of one. And then this one is just a variation of this guy over here. This one's all pretty much drawn. And if we have time, I'll show you how to do that guy. Any questions for me?
Not yet, Kris.
All right. I love that everybody's so into their painting that they don't have time to ask questions. Here. And observe your plants or plants at the store next time you go. Take a picture of a plant that you see that you want to paint and try to translate it to paint, either by drawing it, sketching it out with a pencil, or just by drawing with your brush directly.
You could even make those into holiday plants, couldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. You put a bow on it, put a little ornament on it, some little berries on it.
Some little berries, and
Yeah.
then, you know, kind of put them on make them a Christmas card. If you
Yeah.
start now, right, you can
True.
making your holiday card. You do a couple every weekend.
Very true. Or you can even take a picture of it with your phone or scan it in and have it printed at Walgreens or so many
Nice.
places now.
I didn't even think about that.
You
Yeah.
can just paint
'Cause you
one
can
or
get rid of
two.
this, right?
Yeah. I mean, even if you painted like a whole bunch and you had them printed on note cards and you just gave that as a gift too, you know, that's cute, like a hostess gift.
I love getting note cards as a gift.
I do too. And I like the little note cards. I don't like the 5x7s.
Mhm.
I like the little 4x6 ones.
So I know you can think of a million reasons to use
Oh yeah.
those.
And I'll be doing another holiday card class this holiday season for sure.
Oh yeah,
Those are always fun.
you bet.
I haven't designed it yet, but I will. So if anybody has any ideas of what they would like on a holiday card, pop it in the chat and Lorraine and I will make it happen. No pressure, Lorraine.
Well, I don't think we've decided what you're going to do that Thanksgiving week, have we?
I know we're gonna do like that autumn wreath at some point. I just don't
Oh, maybe
know.
that's it. Yeah, okay. Probably look in December then.
Don't know when. So maybe early December for that one. So this is the autumn wreath. I just happen to have it on my desk.
Oh, so pretty.
Yeah, I like the little mushrooms. So
Yeah, I like the orange.
yeah, you too. I think it would be great for place cards. Be fun.
Someone is suggesting fall leaves or a pumpkin.
Yeah, so we got both of those in that wreath right there. So that's great. I tried to stay away from just plain pumpkin because I know you had a lot of pumpkin stuff going on too. All right, we're moving on to the next plant. So we're gonna do this guy here. If you notice, it's the exact same pot as over here. It's just that sort of browny, orangey terracotta color. But again, you can make it whatever color you want, but it's the same exact technique, and I just wet that paper. Whoopsies. Okay. So we're not going to go over how to do the pot, but I am going to paint it so that it dries while I'm teaching you how to do how to do the leaves. To get that terracotta, I'm mixing orange paint with a little bit of yellow ochre if you have that. Just go back and forth until it's a color that you like. Okay. So we're just going to draw that curve again. Make a straight line. And then I'm going to flip it over. I can try to mimic that curve on the other side. Like so, and gotta mix a little more paint, didn't mix enough, but remember, it just doesn't have to be perfect. And we're just gonna draw a line slight angle. I'm not coming straight down, about quarter of an inch inward. Try to mimic that curve again. And terracotta pots kind of sometimes get a little mossy outside. If you want that to happen, you can drop in a little bit of green when that pot is already or is still wet. And I'm doing that by picking up a little bit of green on my brush. I'm just going to tap a couple areas. And you'll see that green is sort of starting to spread out a little bit. Not dark enough to be mossy, so I'm going to mix up a little bit more and just drop it over right where I had that other shade of green. Rinse my brush, tap it off, and I'm just going to tap around that green just to help it move along. You don't have to do this. You can leave it just your terracotta color because we're going to come back in and do that shadow that I showed you guys before, but terracotta can be nice and grungy looking if you leave it outside for a while. Spot or two here. I'm going to re-wet the top so I can put in a few little green areas. And again, you don't have to do this. I'm just pretending my pot has been outside all summer getting rained on, getting grody. That's what that looks like. And that's that wet on wet technique that I taught you if you took the Watercolor 101 class, which is recorded on the library YouTube channel. Okay, so for this guy here, the leaves are essentially heart-shaped. I got one angled this way and one angled that way. And this one, kind of like a half a heart because I'm looking at it from the side. The stem is sort of thinner on the top and a little bit thicker on the bottom. So to do that stem, I'm going to draw your arc. And then as you get down to the end of it, you just push on your brush a little bit so that the end of your line gets thicker. Or you can just draw your line and draw another line right along the side of it that gets thinner as you go up. And it doesn't have to be perfect, like so. See, it's thinner on top, thicker on the bottom. Want me to show you that one more time? I'm going to draw one line. I'm going to draw another line right next to it, making them touch. And it gets thinner as you get to the top. Like so. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to do the leaf. I'm going to show you the leaf by itself, and then we'll put it on a stem. I'm going to mix up a darker shade of green because I want you to see what I'm doing. You don't have to mix your green quite this dark. I'm just compensating for my lighting. Okay. So it's essentially a heart. So you have that dip in the middle, and it's not a hard dip. So it's not like that, like a hard V. It's not quite a U either. So just a soft V, let's call it that. Like so. And you can sketch the outline of a heart like this, but you want a little bit of wave on the edge of the leaf because it's a little wavy. So you can just go right back over it and make a few little waves. And I'll show you this twice, so don't worry. I'm gonna add. And then you want to fill in that shape. And again, if you're filling in your shape and you have a hard line on the edge, you didn't use enough water. I feel like I want to make my shape a little bit longer. Put one more little weave in there. And that's the thing, if you want to change things as you go along, you can. So here's my heart with wavy edges. If you left some holes in there, it would be more Monstera-like. I know everybody loves that plant. I'm going to show you again. That loose V, maybe a U. And then you just draw yourself a heart as long as you want it to be. Right? All of my edges are soft. They're not harsh. Because this is Monstera-esque. It's not quite Monstera. And then I'm going to just wiggle my brush in and out, wavy line, so that the plant has a wavy edge. And they don't have to be identical on either side at all. And then you fill it in. And again, if you wanted to drop in some other colors, some other shades of green to make it interesting while this color is wet, you could put a little bit of maybe a bluish green. You can just tap it right in there. If you want to, you don't have to. Or you could start with a more yellow green and tap in a darker shade of green. And just let it all blend together. Again, I'm just using much darker greens so that you guys can see. And you can either wait till it's dry to do the stem, or you can paint the stem when it's wet. And you can make your stem go any which way. I'm going to make it go down this way. Like so. Now that I think about it, straight might have looked better, but that's totally fine. And that's how you do your stem. You also want to imagine that your stem is connected up here. Now I'm going to let those leaves dry before I put any texture on them. But I'm going to put one, I'm going to draw and paint 3 leaves over on this side. Any questions? Maybe in one of these leaves, I'll leave the holes so it kind of looks more Monstera-y. How about that? Okay, so I think I want this one going sideways, and I'm just going to do the half leaf. So for this, pretend you have half a heart, right? So you have your curve. half a heart. Not the whole thing, just half. And I want to add a little bit of movement to my leaf, a little bit of wave on the edge, and then I'm just going to fill that whole thing in. And maybe I want to make that tip a little bit longer. And then I'm going to put a stem going into my pot. Make the bottom of the stem a little thicker, like so. So we have one. Then we're going to do the full heart. And I think I'll do another half heart on the other side so you can see how to do that again. Let's do our full heart first. So put this one up here. So I'm going to do my soft V, draw my heart shape. Maybe this guy's coming sort of straight down. And I'm going to run my brush along the sides, like in a weave on one side. Along the other side, and fill it in. And I think I want to add a little bit of dark green. Where was I? Just going to go in with this green. I forgot what green I was using. I think I mixed the dark into the green I was using. All right. So I'm going to imagine that my stem starts here. And I'm going to make it come straight down. Like so. And we're going to pretend that this one sort of leans this way. So I'm just going to move my paper, do my soft V, draw my heart. Give myself a few little waves. Oh, I'm going to put in a few empty spots so it looks like a monstera. And then just paint around. So I just drew a few circles, or a few ovals rather. And I'm going to leave them open. So it's monstera-esque, but it's not quite a monstera because those leaves split eventually. Then maybe the stem just went straight down. Like so. And even though I don't love even numbers, I am going to do one more half heart over here. So you just want to draw your half of that V. Connect it. And then on the outer edge, you want to make your fluted shape, little hills. And then we have another little half leaf. And we're going to let that dry. We're going to let the leaves dry before we put a little bit of texture on it. So I'm going to move to the pot, take my dark blue, I'm going to put a shadow in just like we did with that first pot. Under here, down along the sides. A little bit on top. Then I'm going to soften it off with clean water. And again, if you want to learn how to soften off those lines, you can go look at the recorded video on Watercolor 101. And there you go, that's your pot. You can let that dry. This leaf I think is dry enough for some texture. I'm just gonna take a darker shade of green. And then you can just come down the center, start where that stem would be, starting under the leaf, and just draw a thin line all the way down to the bottom of the V. Guys, dry enough too. You're just putting a center line on the leaf. You could do it on here if you wanted to, but by going like this along the top, then just going to arc down from the middle towards the end of the leaf, like so, on either side. And this is optional, you don't have to do it. Like so. And you can even just do it on one or two. You don't have to do it on all of them. But I'll show you how you would do it on the half leaf. Just one half. And it angles down. You can angle it up if you want to, but I like how it looks down on these leaves. So, and you could even decide to just cover half your leaf in a darker shade, just for a little more interest. Maybe this leaf is in the shade, not getting a whole lot of sunshine, so the color looks a little darker. I'm still being careful to preserve those little ovals that I drew. There you go. And you can leave that just like that. Or even maybe this whole guy is in the shade too. Maybe there's a big old tree there hiding some shade. And then you can also take some of that dark color and darken up the base of those stems just a little bit. Doesn't get as much light down at the base of the plant because the leaves are covering up the light, and give it a little more dimension that way. And there's your plant. I don't know what we call that plant. It's just some kind of tropical plant. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes to finish that, and then we'll move on to these guys over here, which are basically the same thing in a different formation. And I will paint them on one piece of paper side by side so you can see. Any questions for me? Or are you guys busy painting away? I'll hold up some of these close to the camera so you can screenshot them before we go, in case you want to practice later with your friends or your family. So I'm going to practice some leaf drills while you guys are finishing that up. Some of you have done this with me before. Some of you, this is going to be brand new. It's the easiest leaf in the world. Maybe I'll just do it really dark so you guys can see it easier. Okay, use dark green. What you want to do for this leaf, all of these leaves here, you put the tip of your brush down, you push down, and then come back up. Don't pick up your brush until just the tip of the brush is left on the paper. So push down while you're dragging your brush backwards, and you come back up. You can just practice that. Tip of the brush, push down, pull your brush up. And that's how you get really simple leaves. If I wait a long time before I push down the brush and I drag it for a long time, I can get like a longer bamboo looking leaf. If I want a really thick leaf, which we're not doing today, but I'm just going to show you real quick.
Kris, someone's asking if you're going to do the lower left plant.
This guy?
Yeah.
So if we have time, we're going to get to these guys.
Okay.
This one before that one. And then you do another leaf right next to it and you make sure that it smacks together and you get a much bigger leaf without having to go get a larger brush. All right, so you can practice these leaves all day long because they're so much fun, but that's the basic movement that you want to do with your brush for these two guys. So for this one, same stem as this pretty much, or same stem as this guy, and then you do the leaf at the tippy top. So you want to do your curved branch, and at the end of that curved branch, you're going to do that leaf shape. You don't want to press down too hard because you don't want the leaf to be too wide, or maybe you do. You can practice with that. I'm going to do another. And that's all there is to that plant right there. I'm going to go a little bit quickly just because I want to get to those last plants, but also it's the same exact technique for two. I don't need to go as slowly. That's all you do to get that plant. Now to make it into this, instead of one leaf on the end of the branch, it's going to end up being like this. Oh, we had a whole bunch of leaves on one stem. So you paint your stem. And again, we want to angle. Same technique with pushing your brush down, but you want to angle it. So I'm angling my brush. It's not straight, it's angled. Put the tip of my brush down, push down a little bit, and come back up. And you don't want to push down on your brush too much. And then you just want to continue up the stem. I'm making mine a little bit larger than this image so you can see it better. When you come to the top, same exact thing. And then you want to flip this over. And do the same exact thing, just so it's easier to angle your brush. Now, with this leaf, I started all the way down at the bottom, but with this plant, it's more like a palm. And I didn't start it all the way at the bottom, so there's space. So that's the technique. Now I'm gonna do it on the plant itself so you can see. So this pot is really simple. You just have your curve that you always start with. And then it's basically a U shape. You just curve it, flipping it over. Like so, and then you fill it in. There you go. And that's how you make that pot. Super simple. This pot is fun. It's the same exact, pretty much technique as that one, except you're going to put a little pattern on it if you want to. You don't have to. Be kind of fun to draw this pot and then put lines inside of it. So you have your curve, but instead of going straight down on the edge like these ones, you just give it a little curve on both sides. My brush has a bunch of extra dust fibers in it because I left my paints open overnight. So don't be me. Make sure you shut your paint when it's dry. And then you want to come down on the edge, slight angle like with that first pot we made, and then curve the bottom. So see, you can make slight little tweaks to all your different pots. I mean, you could even draw this one, and instead of filling it in, put a pattern. Focus. Not sure why we're struggling. Okay. Oh my. There we go. Okay. And then all this pattern is just a bunch of swirls with my brush. You just make little swirls. Little curls and swirls. No rhyme or reason. And that's how you get your texture on the pot. There we go. All right. So over here, I think I'm just going to do 3. Because this is how I buy the plant, and then this will be how it gets after living with me for a couple weeks. 1, 2, 3. I don't know what it is, but it cannot get a palm to stay alive. And so I'm not starting at the bottom. That'll give you a completely different plant. Start a little bit up and angling my brush. And I'm just going to fill it in. And then I'm going to twist my paper around so I don't have to twist my hand. And the library is really good about getting these up fairly quickly in a couple of days, so you can paint along again if I'm going a little bit too fast for you today. Or if you want to show somebody or paint with somebody else. Ooh, kind of like it with just 3. And I could literally paint leaves all day long. It's so much fun. That's your little plant right there. Same exact technique. We're going to go over to this guy. And we're just gonna wing it here. I'm not gonna follow the exact shape. And then notice I'm pressing a little bit harder on my brush. You can see the difference in the size of the leaves. Same exact technique, very light pressure, same exact brush. Really light pressure gave me smaller leaves. A little bit more pressure, it's giving me larger leaves. And I also changed the color of my green. Be very careful to not pop my hand in that wet paint over here. Yikes. Maybe I'll have one going here. And this one sort of has more swooping branches. Oh, do you guys see what I did? My paper went under my paper towel and it's all smeared. Oh, I like that too. I'll just have to paint another one later. You guys, I do that so many times. But you know what? You can paint more and you just get more and more practice that way. And there you go. Two looks, two different plants out of the same exact technique. How fun is that? And if you invent any new plants using those techniques, please email it to me. I'd really like to see. In fact, Lorraine and I love to see what you make. So email us and let us see what you've made. Mine is Kris Loya Art, KrisLoyaart @gmail.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Kris Loya Art. I would love to see what you paint. All right, so we have 10 minutes. So we're going to be able to get to this guy, but I'll let you screenshot. I'll hold it up closer so you can screenshot this before we leave. So you can try to recreate it using the techniques that we learned today. In fact, I would be interested to see how you recreate that one. Okay, so same exact pot. So I'm just going to paint it really quickly because I don't need to teach that pot again. It's the same exact pot as that one and that one. And if you have questions, we have about 10 minutes left, so now's the time to get them in. And I think Lorraine probably, I can't see the chat, but she might have put her email address in there as well for you guys to send pictures. All right, so that's my pot. And I'm just going to paint this plant directly on here because I want you to see how to paint it into the pot. So this leaf is essentially the same as this leaf, except this leaf is just a little bit taller, and some of them sort of just swoop, but the just, you know, using your paintbrush like a pencil to draw, same technique. Right? So I usually start on the outside here, and we're curve up, curve up. And then you fill that guy in. Then I go over here just so I can see how far out I want my plant to be. And then I fill it in. And that's all it is. It kind of looks like Baby Yoda. And maybe I can fill in this one over here. If you're worried about the colors mixing together or the leaves mixing together, then you can wait, paint them like this, and wait for them to dry. The base of these leaves are hidden in the soil, so that's why I'm not making perfect ovals on the bottom. They're kind of cut off by the rim of the pot. I'm not too worried about them melting together. I just fill them in. Because I go in when it's dry and I put a little bit of shadowing so you can tell that they're different leaves. And that's all it is. So in between all of these, you're going to add 1 to 2 depending on how big the space is. The space is really big. So I'm going to add 2. And you keep going until you fill all of them in. So it's sort of like this plant that we've done before in the cactus class, except we're not putting the cactus texture on it. So this one makes it look more like cacti and more craggy. This one doesn't have all of that texture on it. And so what I do, this is not super dry, so it may or may not work out, but I'll show you how I get them to look like they're separate. Is when it's super dry, I'll decide, okay, this guy is behind the 2 that are on either side. So I'll carefully darken up that in-between area. And then I'll blend it out. So it's lighter on top and darker on the bottom. See it like that. And of course I wait for it to dry so it's not going to melt like it's melting into the other colors there. And again, I'll go in, okay, this one's behind these guys. Put the darker color in, clean off my brush and soften off that edge. So do you see how that's beginning to happen? It's looking like some of those leaves are behind others. And you just keep going with that texture. Now what I did here was, when it was really, 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 really dry, I just went over it with a really dark color and I just made a few swipes with my brush to make the base really, really dark. But then I didn't blend those lines out at all. I left them harsh. You see how harsh those lines are? They're not blended out. And that's how you get that plant. And of course you can darken up your pot the same way I taught you, or you could put a pattern on your pot. Maybe this one I won't soften it off. I'll leave it with hard edges. I mean, you can do all sorts of things. You can put dots or speckles or lines if you wanted to on your leaf to give it texture and to change the look of the plant too completely. So we have just a few more minutes. So I'm gonna hold these up so you guys can get screenshots of them. Also, if you have any questions, now is your time. I'm gonna hold this up for about 10 seconds. If you want to grab your phone and take a photo of it, or you want to grab a screenshot of it, you could do that now. Are there any questions, Lorraine? Or everybody too busy painting?
No questions, Kris. I think everybody on here at this point is like an expert, you know, they're used to this. And
yeah, I'll let you guys screenshot even the one that I ruined. Thanks for joining us to paint plants today, guys. This was a lot of fun. Come on, focus. There we go. This guy, yeah. That poor plant just never stood a chance. I keep crashing into it. And then you can also screenshot these pots if you want some ideas. And I really look forward to seeing what you guys paint because I always like to see your take on what I show you guys here. You guys always come up with some really neat stuff. All right, and that was our plant class. I hope you guys had fun.